Welcome to this explainer. Today we're actually traveling back in time to uncover what I'd call a hidden cornerstone of sports history. We're going to dive into how a single, largely forgotten 1970 match between the Dutch side Feyenoord and the Scottish giant Celtic birthed the modern tactical game we watch today. It's a story of pure arrogance, tactical innovation, and a literal revolution that completely changed the geometry of the pitch. Okay, let's jump right into our syllabus for today's masterclass in football history. We're going to hit 1. Football's Old World Order. 2. The Battle of Britain. 3. The Upset in Milan. 4. Birth of Total Football. And finally, 5. The Modern Tactical Legacy. Part 1. Football's Old World Order, the 1960s status quo. Before we get to the tactical revolution in Rotterdam and Milan, we really need to understand the rigid, kind of binary world of 1960s football that was just begging to be disrupted. Because football at the time, it was heavily polarized. On one side, you had brute physical force, epitomized by the English kick and rush school and Alf Ramsey's 1966 World Cup winners, which was built on a really strict 4-4-2 structure. And then on the exact opposite side, you had the Italian catenaccio. This was a system of pure containment. It relied on suffocating, deep defensive mastery and lightning-fast counterattacks. But then came 1967. This was the pivotal year Celtic shattered that binary completely. Under their legendary manager, Jock Stein, they absolutely dismantled Inter Milan's famous catenaccio system in Lisbon. That made them the very first British and Northern European team to win the European Cup. It was huge. They proved, really for the first time, that a fluid attacking style could actually dismantle the ultimate defensive machine. Part 2, the Battle of Britain, Celtic's Rise and Hubris. Let's fast forward a bit to the 1969-1970 season. By this point, Celtic are firmly established as the undisputed yet dangerously overconfident giants of Europe. Celtic's path to the 1970 final was nothing short of legendary. Jock Stein showed this incredible tactical pragmatism, pulling his team into a super tight midfield defense to completely stifle Fiorentina. Then, in the semifinals, they faced the English champions, Leeds United, in what was dubbed the Battle of Britain. Celtic didn't just beat Leeds, they utterly humiliated them over 2 legs, all while playing in front of a staggering, record-breaking crowd of 136,505 fans at Hampton. Try to even picture a crowd that massive. Now listen to this quote from Jock Stein, spoken to his biographer right after that massive semifinal win. "We would think a manager heading into a European Cup final would be losing sleep over tactics, right? Well, instead, his focus completely shifted away from the pitch and straight towards the vast wealth of their upcoming Dutch opponents, Feyenoord. The serpent of complacency had basically fully infected the Celtic camp. They honestly felt the hard work was already done just by beating Leeds. The squad even went ahead and appointed a commercial agent to handle pop records and syndication rights. Meanwhile, Stein was reportedly handing out champagne at the airport before the flight home from Milan. They were treating the biggest club match in the absolute world like it was a casual victory lap. Part 3. The Upset in Milan, a clash of ideologies. So this brings us to May 6, 1970 at the San Siro, where Celtic's sheer arrogance finally met the meticulous, highly calculated preparation of Ernst Happel's Feyenoord. The contrast in preparation here is just wild. While Celtic treated the build-up like a beach holiday, they even dropped a key midfielder for an incredibly lax 2-man setup. Feyenoord was quietly plotting. Ernst Happel deployed this perfectly balanced 4-3-3 system, paired with really intense physical conditioning. It was designed specifically to totally suffocate the Scottish champions right in the middle of the park. And when the whistle blew, Feyenoord played a clinical game of sheer geometric precision. Happel ordered his defenders to double-mark Celtic's star winger, just completely neutralizing him. Meanwhile, Feyenoord's midfield trio totally dominated the space, creating constant passing triangles to control possession. Even Feyenoord's center-backs were pushing up and initiating attacks. Celtic captain Billy McNeil actually admitted later that the 2-1 scoreline flattered them. He said that everywhere that mattered, Celtic got tactically stuffed. But the defining moment didn't actually come until the absolute brink, the 11th, 17th minute of extra time. Under relentless, suffocating pressure from the Dutch side, Celtic's defense finally cracked. A long ball caused McNeil to stumble, which allowed the Swedish striker Ove Kinval to just pounce and lob the winning goal over the keeper, the ultimate 2-1 upset. The European press was absolutely stunned by this. The Italian newspaper Il Giorno noted that the Dutch players twisted and turned like graceful toreadors. The traditional romance and brute force of the game instantly replaced by calculated spatial dominance. Celtic wasn't just beaten, they were completely outclassed by a scientific approach to football that literally no one had seen before.
Part 4. Birth of Total Football, the Dutch Revolution. Because that night in Milan wasn't just a trophy win for Feyenoord, it was essentially the pilot episode for a tactical revolution that would change the sport forever.
Now, this explainer wouldn't be complete without defining the actual movement this match birthed: total football. At its core, it's a highly fluid system where literally any outfield player can seamlessly take over the role of any other player, all while retaining the team's organizational structure. It requires extreme intelligence, physical adaptability, and, above all, spatial awareness. In this system, the ball dictates the structure, not some rigid starting lineup. In practice, this was a massive departure from the 1960s. Suddenly, we saw goalkeepers involved in passing buildups and fluid positional switching all over the pitch. But the core philosophy was spatial control, making the pitch feel absolutely massive when you have the ball, and then aggressively shrinking the pitch when you lose it through proactive counterpressing. Possession wasn't just for scoring anymore. It became a weapon designed to physically drain the battery of the opposition. But here is the irony. It wasn't Feyenoord who became globally synonymous with the system. It was their bitter domestic rival, Ajax. Ajax coach Rinus Michels intensely studied Feyenoord's 4-3-3 dominance from that 1970 season to solve his own team's tactical vulnerabilities. He took that structure, added a sweeper, basically handed the keys to Johan Cruyff, and Ajax went on to perfect the system, winning the next 3 consecutive European Cups. Part 5. The Modern Tactical Legacy 1970 to Today. Let's zoom out a bit to see how the shockwaves of Feyenoord's 1970 victory rippled through the decades to create the very football you watch on your screens today. Think about this grand evolution across the decades. We started with the rigid English structures of the 60s, which were completely shattered by the Dutch spatial revolution of the 70s. Decades later, that fluid attacking provoked the ultra-compact Italian defenses of the 90s, and that in turn challenged the Spanish to invent the relentless possession of tiki-taka in the 2010s. All of this history has layered together to culminate in the 2020s, the modern hybrid era. That 1970 DNA passed down through very distinct coaching dynasties. Michels brought it from Ajax to Barcelona, where Cruyff eventually taught it to Pep Guardiola. Meanwhile, the aggressive counter-pressing elements evolved through the German and English schools, with managers like Henkes, Tuchel, and Klopp. These are just isolated tactics we're talking about. They are direct descendants of that single night in Milan. Which brings us to the matches you watch every single weekend today. The top managers in the world, they don't rely on one pure philosophy anymore. They operate as system orchestrators. They build these incredibly adaptable hybrid models. A modern team like Manchester City, for example, will use 1970s Dutch possession to control the game, but then immediately switch to aggressive German-style counter-pressing the second they lose the ball. It's an endless evolution for sure, but its absolute foundation was laid by Feyenoord. Which leaves us with a pretty cruel twist of sports history to ponder. Feyenoord were the true pioneers. They slayed the mighty Celtic, ended the era of 1960s rigidity, and built the undeniable blueprint for total football. So, if they started it all, why is Ajax the only name we remember when we talk about the revolution? It's a fascinating reminder that in history, it isn't always the pioneer who gets the glory, but the one who perfects the art. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the history you think you know.